Hi, I'm Jason White. Thank you for returning. As I said in I think it was in my introductory video, that I'm really big into 1980s horror films. That's my all-time favorite decade of movies. And for almost all movies, action, comedy, horror, obviously, science fiction, it was just a really great decade, I think. And in the horror movie section or area of that decade, there was some really silly films, but there was also some really scary films. And so, because it's my favorite, I thought it'd be cool to do a top five. I've seen somebody else doing this. I can't remember who. I will try to give credit to who's doing this down below in the comments. But I thought it would be cool to do a top five of every year for 1980, for the 1980s. So this one, obviously, is the first one. Top five horror movies that were released in 1980. I went through a list of movies that were released. I went through a few lists, and so there's a chance I missed some. It was really hard to narrow down. I thought it'd be easier, to be honest, but it was quite difficult to narrow down. But I think I narrowed it down to what I would say. And remember, this list is subjective. This is my opinion. Feel free to name your own list down below and what you think is the top five horror movies released in the year of 1980. So in the top five spot, the fifth spot, I have Motel Hell. I watched this movie. I didn't watch this movie in the 80s or 90s. I watched it like a few years ago. And I thought this movie was just batshit crazy, because it is batshit crazy. And that's why it made this list. I absolutely love movies that are just batshit crazy. I I can't explain why. If you know my reading tastes, for example, I like kind of crazy stuff too. So I just like things that play with reality, and this movie certainly does that. Number four, I have Inferno, the Dario Argento film. And this one, I liked Deep Red better. This is, of course, and Suspiria, but Inferno is a really good one too. One thing about Dario Argento films that I always like is how he has the amateur detective, and that's present in this. When somebody gets murdered, I think it's a brother and sister team. They go and investigate to see if they can find out who the killer is. And it's definitely a style over substance type movie. It's sort of artistic in a sense, in the way Dario Argento films were back in the day. I mean, think of Suspiria. That movie is it's out there, and it made my top 10 horror list of all time. But this movie is within the same world, sort of. It's part of a trilogy. I can't remember. I think it's the last one. I know that he released some films in the 90s and even the aughts, but they're not as good as these earlier films of his. But yeah, I really liked Inferno. It's a lot of fun. Despite I'm not really, I guess I am into artsy fartsy films sometimes, but only when it's done like this. I like the use of colors that Argento used. He was very much a painter in a sense when it came to his films, because he would paint the photo or the movies for you with color. All right. In at number three, and it's weird that this is so far down the list, but the next two movies are, I think, better. But in at number three is Friday the 13th, the very first Friday the 13th. And I believe Jason is driving the mystery machine there. But as you know, in the first movie, he didn't wear a mask. He didn't wear a mask until the third one. And in fact, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, it's not even Jason in the first movie doing the killers. It's his mom. But this movie really changed things. Halloween was instrumental in creating the slasher film, but I think Friday the 13th really slammed it home. And I really enjoyed this film. It's a lot of fun. You're going to see a lot more of these Friday the 13th films on these lists as I continue on to 81, 82, 83, and whatnot. But you know, this film is actually kind of it is actually kind of scary at some parts, and it's also a lot of fun. It's where the whole Friday the 13th began, and it's a really well done film, and it belongs on this list. It belongs on any 80s horror movie list, I think. In at number 2 is The Fog. John Carpenter's The Fog. I love John Carpenter films, and The Fog is it's very much a fun film as well. I just love I love the small town radio DJ late at night, and then the fog rolls in, and within this fog there are zombie pirates. It's just so much fun, and I've watched this movie countless times, as pretty much all these movies, and you know, it's a good movie to watch in the summer too, actually, and I kind of have a craving to watch it now. Okay, number 1. I don't think it's going to be a big surprise because of what it is, but number 1 is The Shining. The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. There's some interesting things about this film. I love this film, and I love the book. Stephen King has gone on, is well known to say how much he doesn't like the Kubrick adaptation, and there's a good reason for that, because although the plot points are all there, pretty much the characters are very different, and The Shining, the book, is very much about the characters, but Kubrick sort of changed the characters, especially with Jack Torrance and Wendy, Jack's wife. They're both completely different people. Jack, oh man, I wish I could remember who said it. But there was somebody I was watching recently in a video who said the Jack Torrance in the movies, that motherfucker is going to kill his family. It doesn't matter if he goes to the hotel or not. And that's so true. He is. He's on that path already, and the hotel just pushes him over the edge. He's a psychopathic asshole from the very beginning. You can see it in the interview that he gives with the Overlook Hotel people when he's applying for the job. Or actually, I don't think it's an interview. It's more of a "you got the job" type thing, and here's what you have to do. But anyways, it's a fantastic movie. Regardless, I love it, and I know a lot of people love it. And so yeah, there's my first top 5 list. 1980 horror films, not 80s, but 80. I think, yeah, 1980. Yeah. All right, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and I will catch you in the next film.